Hey guys, BuildZoid here. And is anybody else bored of seeing this screen yet? No? Okay, cool. So today what we're going to be doing is taking a look at a very interesting and very concerning glitch with the 2.4 BIOS. So that's the AGESA 1006 BIOS on the Asrock Taichi. I do believe this glitch may or may not affect a lot of other motherboards, so I really recommend checking if your motherboard might not have this issue. I suspect especially other Asrock motherboards I'd be very suspicious of, just because generally most motherboard manufacturers, if they have one problem on one board, they probably have that same problem on a lot of other boards, just because of how motherboards are developed. So if you have an Asrock board, I really recommend that you do this. You check that you don't have this issue, because you might, and if you do have this issue, then you're losing a ton of CPU performance. So we're just going to put overclock mode to manual. We're going to set CPU frequency to 3.9 gigahertz, because that is a easy overclock to do on this CPU that I have. We're going to load up the XMP. We're going to set our voltages, or it's not going to run. 1.42. 1.15. This is actually really high for 3200. I can do it on less. And actually this is really high for 3.9 as well, but I just can't be bothered dialing in like ideal voltages, so I'm just setting whatever works. And that's all we're going to do, right? And this right here is going to perform like garbage. It's going to perform really, really bad. There we go. We're back in the BIOS. We're going to go all the way to Windows. And okay, it's having some trouble booting up, so that was a false start. So it's trying again. It usually does it on the second attempt, so yeah, the teething issues, but we're looking at a bigger issue here today, not just the whole, minor issues with startup. Please boot. Okay, there. Finally got to Windows. And we're in. And now we're just going to run some 3D Mark. TimeSpy. Come on, load up. Oh, I opened it twice. Always fun. Gonna go benchmarks, details, custom. We're just going to run the CPU test. The reason why we're running the 3D Mark TimeSpy CPU test and not some other CPU benchmark is because the 3D Mark TimeSpy CPU test is extremely memory intensive. Well, not extremely memory intensive, but it does pick up on memory performance differences really, really well. 3D Mark 11's physics test also does, and Firestrike, I think, also does. I'm not sure how much, though, with Firestrike. I do know that TimeSpy is good, and 3D Mark 11 is supposedly good, but I've not tested 3D Mark 11. I had TimeSpy installed, so that's the first thing I tested. I saw that the differences were to my liking, so that's what I continued working with. So let's run this. Also, I did check the scores against Geekbench as well, so it's not like I'm only using one benchmark. Like, I didn't find this issue with just one benchmark. I've tested other things, and basically everything exhibits it. And the reason for it is really, really obvious once we go back into the BIOS and I show you what we're going to be changing to make this score better. But, yeah, first we need that baseline score. So our initial FPS right at the start is sort of in the 50s, which is not ideal for TimeSpy at 3.9 gigahertz. It should be well into the 60s, which it will be later on in the video, but not right now, just because of that little glitch that we're going to be taking a look at. And we're closing out on about 25, 26 FPS. So that was what the run, and the CPU test on TimeSpy is really it's a CPU test. It barely uses the GPU at all. So we got 7,500 points. This is really, really bad for a 3.9 gigahertz 1700. And for those of you who might be like, oh no, you're faking it. It's not 3.9. It's at 3.9. The voltage readout is broken. I don't know why. Don't really care. 1600, 18, 20, 20, 39 timings, 1T command rate. There's nothing particularly suspicious here. So let's go fix that score, because it is really, really bad. Like, this is lower than what you would get on AGESA 1004 3200, so that's why, like, yeah, it's bad. And we're gonna fix it. Go to DRAM timing configuration, and right off the bat, we will notice something very interesting. 15, 17, 56. These three timings are completely and utterly wrong. 6, 8, 24. Well, actually, I'm being overly aggressive here on purpose, and actually we'll tighten up the entire thing. It's going to be lower. Actually, this is going to be way lower. You can run that way lower than that. I'm not going to touch anything else. So we're going to set up our timings like that. And now we're going to run TimeSpy again. We're going to just run the CPU test. And, well, some of you are going to get very, very shocked. I think. But basically, do keep in mind that I basically cut those timings that were originally there in half. So we've pretty much picked up, like, those operations are now being done at twice the speed, essentially. Also, as far as stability is concerned, I haven't stress tested this, like, super properly, but, you know, it's like, the thing is, those auto timings are performing worse, like, almost as bad as 2133. So, yeah. Also, I'm not being super aggressive with the timings. Just a bit more than the BIOS will be once I show you the third attempt. There we go. Right off the bat, we can see our FPS is now hovering around the 60 mark. So we've already picked up like 10 FPS just at the start of the test. And like we're going to pick up so many points on the actual final score that you're not going to believe it. I don't think. Yeah. We're now scoring 8,500 points. Last time we were scoring 7,500. Now we're at 8,500. We've picked up 1,000 points by literally fixing, you know, a couple timings. That is really, really, really bad. Okay, that is just like, no, that should never, ever happen. Just, yeah, no, that's just a catastrophe. Really. You're losing, like, that is such a massive jump in CPU performance that you're losing a ton of CPU performance there, you know, just on your memory timings being extra bad because there's a bug on the BIOS. And I'll show you that it's a bug because now I'm going to set all the timings back to auto and we're still going to be scoring pretty good. I actually didn't go through and do everything I wanted to do now that I think about it, but whatever. Auto will get a bit of an advantage thanks to that. So now if we go to the memory timings, we can see that, yeah, you know, it set the timings I dialed in, and we just set everything back to auto. So some of these are going to get a bit looser. But the thing I forgot to set is I wanted to disable gear down, hard lock, and 1T, but we're going to just leave that auto. And disable that. Disabling the power down enable thing gives you some extra performance, just a little bit. As well as disabling gear down helps, but yeah, save configuration and reset. And now if you remember at the start of the video, when I had the timings on auto, we were getting like 56 for TFAW and 15 and 17 TRRD. And now we're going to have way better timings. This is actually not far from what I set, right? TRRDS is now 6, so that's actually the same exact time setting I had. So I set 6 manually. TRRDL is now at 9 instead of 8, which is what I set manually. TFAW is at 34 instead of 32, which is what I set manually. Or was it 28? Something like that. These didn't change. This is up by 4 again. And this is back up at 18. So that went way up. And we're at 2T command rate. It's just, that's not honestly going to impact the performance that much, as you will soon see once we get into Windows and run TimeSpy again. And this is auto settings, so it's like, this is what the board should normally do. Okay. Also, if you're wondering about getting 3D Mark so that you can do the custom run thing, 3D Mark is currently on the Steam sale. Just going to point that out. I'm not sponsored by them or anything. It's just like, I think it's a really good benchmark. I should ask 3D Mark for a sponsorship. That'd be cool. Free benchmarks! I already own all of them anyway, so that's not going to help me. But yeah, now the, like, this is going to score pretty much the same as what my settings did. The 2T might bring it down a bit, but we're again just starting off at around 60 FPS. We'll close out on around 29 instead of bumping into 30. So mine was a tad faster, but like this, at this point the score is going to be respectable instead of just completely garbage. There we go. Come on. There we go. 8.357, which this is not, well, 8357. This is not the highest score I've seen on auto settings. Sometimes auto will default to 1T time command rate. Sometimes it defaults to 2T. If it was at 1T, it would be scoring higher. I have a... When I had this set to 1, like earlier when I was testing at 1, when it defaulted to 1T, like really right now the auto settings just do silly things for no apparent reason. But earlier, yeah, on 1T this was scoring around the same as what my custom settings were doing, so it was doing like 8.5K. Actually, I had custom settings that were scoring as high as 8.6K. So yeah, but basically, you know, 8.3K, 8.5K, still better than 7,500. Like, that is such a massive difference that it's just like, that's like, you know, that's over 10%. That's an over 10% increase in CPU performance because of memory settings. That's ridiculous. And it is very much, you know, it's a glitch because the board is now running auto timings and they're not garbage. And they're not even the same as mine. They're just not as awful as before. So I'm not sure how that is happening, but there is evidently a very big, like there's evidently a glitch where the board will just miss the memory timings completely. And the way that happens is you basically reset the board and you just never ever toy with any of the sub timings and it'll just default to the really, really bad timings for some reason. I have no idea why. But basically, yeah, if you have an Asrock board, I basically just really recommend that you test, well, actually, you can just go into your memory settings, and if your TFAW is at like 50-something, and you're only at 3200 megahertz, it's too high. It's really that simple. Your 4 activate window should not be in the 50s, well, if you're running BDI. I don't know how other memory ICs behave, so I haven't tested AFR at all, and I've never tested any, like, I've never tested any of the other memory ICs, but on Samsung BDI, if your 4 activate window is over 50 at 3200 megahertz, your 4 activate window timing is wrong. It's really that simple. It's just wrong. It shouldn't be that high. It should be sort of between 30 and 40. Somewhere in that range. Your RRD settings should never ever really go beyond 9. right? RRDL and RRDS should never be beyond 9. Typically, your RRDS is going to be 2 to 3 lower than RRD. That's just how it normally times. So I was setting 6.8. For other, you might want the board autos to 6.9 once you fix it. But if you let the board do its own thing, it'll default to 15.17, which is basically twice the latency for those two operations, which is just like, that is ridiculous. You lose a ton of performance basically just to the board messing up its timings on if you don't, touch the subtimings. So yeah, that's concerning. That's a very big problem, and I hope it gets fixed soon, though, I don't know. This really needs to get fixed. I'm obviously gonna send Asrock a message about this, because this is ridiculous. And if you're using the AGESA 1006, I really recommend that you go and check what kind of timings you're defaulting to. If you don't want to even check the timings, just test memory performance against AGESA 1004, because 1004 is using straps. So the timing, the board can't fail to train because the board isn't doing the timings, right? Because that's what changed between 1006 and 1004. On 1006, the BIOS of the motherboard actually has access to a lot of the memory timing registers on the Ryzen CPUs. And normally, on 1004, the CPU would just set its own memory settings all on its own, and the BIOS never really had any input on it, so something like this couldn't happen. So AGESA 1004 actually would outscore the really bad timings that this set by accident earlier, the bug. It's like AGESA 1004 outperforms that massively for the same frequency. And basically, you might be like, okay, but what if on 1006 I'm running 300 or 400 megahertz higher? Here's the thing. I have 2666 frequency runs that are outperforming the bugged run I did at the start of this video. Here's a collection of scores that I have. So this is 2666 with the bug. We're looking at 6.6K. This is 2666, still with the bug, but a different, it seems to screw up the timing slightly differently every single time round. This is unbugged. This is what you can get on a properly set up 2666. This is with the bug fixed as well. This is a properly set up 2066. So if you are running, your memory, some memory kits, you definitely picked up a ton of frequency, but on Asrock boards, there's a pretty good chance, I'd say, based on the fact that I've seen this, that your board will mess up all of the subtimings to the point that you're going to be actually performing worse than AGESA 1004 on 2666 timings, or 2933 timings, or just whatever AGESA, you pick up 300 megahertz, but your latencies are 2 to 3 times higher for certain operations, and it's you didn't actually pick up any performance. So yeah, that is very, very concerning. And yeah, I recommend you go just check your timings. If they're really, really high, then pull them down. If you're not on BDI, I don't actually know what to set for the timings. But you can definitely try, just set whatever the maximum value for the timing is. On this board, that would be 12. And then let the boot on that. Assuming it boots, then set it to auto and see if the board, the board at that point should be able to set it up on its own. Though I'm assuming that the board actually has profiles for different memory ICs other than BDI there. So I'm not sure how well that will work. Because it's able to fix itself on my really nice BDI kit doesn't mean that on a Hynix AFR kit it'll fix itself. So it'll be you set manual timings, you post on that, and then you set auto, and it tries to load up really, really aggressive timings again, and it won't post. So yeah, this is, I can't test a different memory IC because I don't have any sticks that work on XMP settings. I can't get, with this bug running, I think if I tried to manually time all of the timings with some of the other kits I have, yeah, I could probably get them working. But I can't get most of the kits I have, except for this one, which I only have 3 kits of DDR4. This is the only kit of DDR4 that XMPs on 1006 for me. So, I can't really test any other memory ICs because I can't even run them at XMP. Well, I can't run them above 2400 manual. So, yeah, it's very much a case of if you have an Asrock motherboard, or even if you have a Gigabyte board, I would be completely unsurprised if a lot of other motherboards exhibited a similar issue. So I really recommend you compare your performance between like 2133, because 2133, I think, like that might not be patched or something. Like it doesn't seem to be affected, but the higher memory speeds seem to be affected. So definitely just check your performance against like 1004 or like 1004 AGESA or 2133 timings, because there's a pretty good chance some of these boards are just going to completely mess up your sub timings, and then you lose a ton of performance to essentially a glitch in the BIOS, which is just, that's just, not worth it. Definitely worth, like, that's something definitely, it's worth trying to fix it, because you pick up so much performance, as I've just shown you. I'm just gonna stop dragging the video out now. Thank you for watching. Like, share, subscribe. Leave a comment down below about, I'm actually really interested to hear from other people with Asrock motherboards. Just what is your TFAW and what is your RRD settings? Like, what does your board default to? Because I am hoping it's not just this board in my memory kit. In which case I've just, wasted everybody's time. But if it is, like, if other people are seeing the same issue, then it'd be really useful to know about it. Because I'm not sure if it's only me, and I can't really, like, I don't have any other motherboards to test with or any other memory kits, as I said earlier. So, yeah, I'm really interested from hearing from other people with Asrock boards on the 1006 AGESA about how your timings sort of work out, because this is ridiculous. And, yeah, that's it. So, basically, don't forget to, help out AHOC on Patreon and through PayPal and buying shirts. And there's the Junkyard you could go check out. There's a single link down in the description for all of that. And yeah, that's it for this video. Thank you for watching, and see you next. Well, that doesn't work out, does it? Because I don't ever get to see you. Well, I guess make sure to catch the next video. There. Goodbye.